Hi guys, welcome back to the Accelerate Plus speaker series. I'm so happy to have here with us Jenn. She's a leadership and executive coach. She's worked with a lot of senior executives. She's on the Forbes Coaches Council. And so today we're just going to be talking about leadership and how you can thrive by developing a leadership attitude, by doing some things, taking actionable steps. So Jenn, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We're so happy to have you. So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at in your journey.
I am the founder of Insido Executive and Leadership Development, and I come from a background of human resources. I'm a chartered professional in human resources, and I'm a master certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. And I started Insido Executive and Leadership Development back in 2009, so more than a decade ago, during a recession.
Mhm.
In looking at taking control of my career direction and having the impact that I wanted to have throughout my career. And I started that business at a time where my peers were mostly men. And if they weren't men, they were men and women that were retired executives or late in their career from executive roles and had tons of credibility behind them. And I received a lot of feedback that it would be really challenging for me in starting out this business because I was young and I didn't have some of the more obvious experience that people might expect in hiring an executive coach. And I took that feedback and I looked at ways to help my credibility be seen and help the business community learn about what I could offer. And here we are more than a decade later that I've built one of the most successful, not the only one, but one of the most successful leadership development firms in Canada. And what our business is we do coaching for leaders across Canada, across North America, and we work with leaders, executives, leadership teams to help them figure out what's truly important so that they can be more strategic and personally fulfilled and do
Mhm.
their highest and best work. And when I say leaders, most of the leaders we work with, they're entitled roles, but not always. Leadership isn't just about the titled role you have in an organization. It's about a way of being, and it's about a journey of human development. So I'm really excited to come and talk with you about my journey of development on this path. And it's something that we coach leaders on every day, yet it's also part of our own personal journey for myself and the other coaches that work with me in Insido to work on our own leadership development every day.
Mhm. I think that's absolutely amazing. The fact that you started this business during a time of recession, you started it with in a very male dominated field. And so to see you thrive in a business like that is just evidence that, we need more leaders like that. We need more minority leaders. We need people to step up and create space for them where it might not be conventional by society's standards. So I think it's very, very commendable, the work that you're doing. And it's just absolutely amazing. So I think it fits in perfectly with our conversation today because we are in the time of COVID-19. So, and being a leadership expert, you have some great insider knowledge on how people can thrive during this time. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know a lot of people listening right now are early in their careers and thinking about their career development, how they're going to progress as leaders, or maybe into their first leadership role, or to be seen as an influencer in the work that they're doing, or even in their wider community. And right now, one of the things that you can do to thrive is to give yourself some permission to take care of yourself and go easy on the project right now. I see a lot of people overloading their plate right now with a lot of projects to take on and to push themselves to take maximum opportunity of this time. So I think the first thing to thrive is to go easy on yourself on those expectations. When we're thrust into a great deal of change, it's easy to overlook the emotional toll and impact that change has on us. and how exhausted we can get. So to start with that permission first, and that it's okay to take some time off, and it's okay to take on some learning for a couple of weeks, and then to pause it and do no additional learning for a week and give yourself a break so that you can come back to it or start something new from a refreshed place. And given that you've given yourself some permission to do one project at a time and go easy on yourself, and you're taking those breaks, the other side of it is now is a really great time to learn something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked with leaders that right now their teams have been downsized and they don't have any direct reports anymore, or they're working from home and they're not having as many interactions with their peers or their colleagues. Okay, well, how can I continue to work on my development if I'm not in my traditional role, or I have direct reports, or maybe I'm in a frontline contributor role, or I'm not working at all? How can I develop? And I encourage you to look at learning something completely different to push your mindset. For example, right now in my family, we're all learning Spanish, and we're using a few online tools to help us learning that, because it's something that is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's a great time to work on learning about a leadership mindset and some of the more challenging leadership skills, like working on your boundaries and learning more about what boundaries are and aren't, and how they connect with being a confident leader, but also an empathetic leader, and being really clear and kind with people, but staying on your side of the fence in relationships. And that's something that you can practice in any interaction you have with someone else, and also practice boundaries with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a great time to master hard conversations. Those
What
tricky
do you mean
conversations.
by hard conversations?
And those hard conversations where emotions run high or the stakes run
Mm-hmm.
high, and there's a lot of those conversations happening right now with so much change. And a great resource I refer a lot of my clients to is the book Crucial Conversations.
Okay.
Love that book. It's got a lot of great tools in it, but some stories from a variety of perspectives to help you look at how does that tool show up in a bunch of different contexts, so you can apply it to yourself and a unique conversation. Because they're tools, they're not a set formula of here's what to say and how to say it. So the stories in that book can give you a real idea, and how do you apply it to your own unique context. And then the last one is mastering courage and vulnerability. And the key to mastering courage and vulnerability is getting clear on how you get in your own way. Do you hustle to be liked and give up your courage or things that are important to you for sake to fit in or go along to get along? Or do you armor up when somebody challenges your thinking and your ideas, and you dig in to protect yourself and prove that you're right at all costs?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you the kind of person that you want to perfect things, or you want to win at all costs and control the environment around you? And part of the journey of mastering courage and vulnerability is learning to let go of being liked or being right or being in control and winning
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of creating results and opportunity for the long term, not just for the short term today. And I talk about it like it's easy. It's the
Mm-hmm.
hardest thing that you'll ever do. And so now's the time that you could really dig into some of that self-discovery, so that when you come back to the workplace, or you are able to engage with people face to face even more, you've got more of those skills to be more effective. But also in doing things in an online environment through Zoom, or even by phone, or even worse, by email, it's harder to navigate our relationships at times like this without being face to face. Even if you've got someone on video, you can't see their whole body. You can only see their image on the screen. And we're missing a lot of body language, and we're losing a lot of the context in the relationship. So these skills around boundaries, mastering hard conversations, and courage and vulnerability are things that you can invest in now in any of your interactions with anyone, including with yourself, that as things continue to change and evolve, will create a solid foundation to move you forward, no matter what your role will be.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you when you talk about courage and vulnerability in terms of it's almost half the battle, or more than half the battle, is just showing up and being able to do something. it's not about what people have to offer in terms of value, because I believe that everyone has value, and that's what we're taught to learn as coaches, is that regardless of where you are at in your career development or career journey, you have something to add to the conversation. And so a lot of students, a lot of early professionals are very conscious about something small like posting on LinkedIn, let's say. And it's very, very big to constantly show up and constantly post with discipline and, keep it going, regardless of what people regardless of being conscious of what people might think of you, if you have anything to offer. And that's when the conversation starts and gets going, right? And that's when you build relationships, not just for the sake of your professional development, but you actually dig deeper and build personal relationships that help with your personal growth as well. So I completely
I
agree with
I agree. And there's something you said though that tweaked me, and it's about the constantly posting or constantly sharing, and that you always have something to add. And I think I'd like to address both of those. The first is constantly
you.
having some boundaries. So when I think about constantly, we can look at it two ways. And one is the never enough and always doing it
Mhm.
versus consistently.
Oh,
For
right.
example, you might have a goal of being constantly posting on social media. And so what does that mean? I post one thing a day every day. Could be my constantly posting and being really consistent with that commitment. Or I'm constantly blogging. Okay, what that means for me is I'm writing a piece every week, or maybe every week is too much for me. Constantly for me in my practice is I actually write an article a month
Mhm.
for my blog and share it out in a newsletter. And then I also write one article a month for Forbes, no more frequently. So that is my constantly. So I like to translate constantly into consistently to
Mhm.
take that pressure off of never enough. And the other piece is, well, what do I have to contribute? Sometimes you don't have your own knowledge to contribute yet, but what you do have to contribute all the time is a question. And being able to reflect, here's something I experienced and here's something I'm curious about, and asking others on their thinking on that question contributes to them to push their thinking. So you always have something to contribute, even if it's a question. And I do that with a lot of the leaders I work with that are moving into more senior leadership roles. Well, what do I have to contribute in this meeting? I'm new. You always have the ability to contribute an insightful question, not for the sake of just asking a question, but one that's naturally come up for you that you're curious about. Offer that up. And we hear in school, there's no such thing as dumb questions. Well, there's no such thing as dumb questions. And if there's a question coming up for you, it can create value for other people too.
Right. I think that's one of the most important things, is to be able to ask, and even saying thank you and reaching out and following up. Those are things that are smaller steps that you can take towards building those personal relationships, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's other mediums using virtually for now.
Absolutely. And if you read someone else's work,
Mhm.
comment on their work or ask a question or send them an email and just let them know the impact that their work had on you or what you took away from it. And don't let the idea that that person is too busy get in the way. Don't ask them for anything. Just let them know that you read their work and it created value for you. And that's a way that you can contribute to that relationship with that person. Even if you never hear back from them, you're doing good in the world by reflecting back some acknowledgments to someone that's created some value and contributed to you. And that helps you develop as a leader by showing that appreciation and gratitude to that person. It also helps you in recognizing the value you took away from them. And it's likelier that you will take action and incorporate what you learned from them into your work going forward.
Mhm, mhm. And just going back to what you said about constantly versus consistently, I think it's important that I mentioned that, yeah, it's different for different people. So like you
Mhm.
mentioned, you post an article every month, and that's your constant, or being
Yeah.
consistent with it, versus somebody who posts every week. And so that's their consistent. So I think there's a lot of pressure around the idea of how often you're supposed to post, how often you're supposed to reach out, how often you're supposed to hold an informational interview. So how do you navigate with that kind of a pressure in this professional environment?
You get to decide. There isn't a rule. And before our interview, we were talking about how I got my first opportunity to write for the Forbes Coaches Council. And what held me back from blogging and writing articles was feeling that pressure and looking around at what everybody else was doing. And I was seeing newsletters or people posting new articles every week or sometimes multiple times in a week. And that was challenging for me to think about my ability to be able to do that. It was too much commitment. So then I just didn't do anything at all. And in talking to a mentor in my own life, figuring out what I could commit to and giving myself permission to start with just that and committing to be consistent with that. And my decision was I could do it once a month. And let's commit to that and get really consistent with that. And then I can reevaluate and see if there's something more frequent that I would like to do. It's been years, many years. I am still not willing to commit to doing something more frequently because I know that I won't be able to be consistent with it. And the feedback that I've received is that people follow my articles and they read them. And when I have missed, a couple of years ago, missed sending out a newsletter, I actually had people asking about it, where if it's more frequent, then people might not read them because there's just too much coming their way. And, to come back to your question of, how do you decide? You just get to decide and to try something, get really consistent with it and see what you learn from it. And then you can evaluate. You can go less frequently, but still be consistent, or more frequently and try it out and see what you learn. We've also tried things like, when do I share my newsletter? I used to share it in the morning. And then we tested sharing it in the morning with half of my subscribers and then sharing it in the afternoon with the other half. And then we flipped to see if it might be who was in that group in the morning or that group in the afternoon. So we flipped them and we saw the same results. And as a result, we changed the newsletter to sharing it with people in the afternoon, because they not only opened it, but they clicked through and read articles more frequently. That tells me that that's maybe a time of day that it lands in their inbox and they have more time or more capacity mentally to be able to absorb and read something, rather than say later, and then it goes into their later never to be seen again ever pile. And so give yourself permission to experiment, but whatever you choose, be consistent with it for a while so that you can also see what results it's offering to you. And these things, they're slow and they build over time. When I sent out my first article, my first newsletter, not a lot of people read it. Don't get discouraged by that. You can always share it again in the future. And then the next one, not a lot of people read that one. And then slowly over time, over years, I built my reputation, but also those articles that I wrote early on, I was able to reshare. And over time, a lot of people have read them. So don't get discouraged if you put something out there and 4 people read it. Do it again, you'll get 4 people. Do it again, you'll get 6 people. Do it again, you'll get 20 people. Do it again, you'll get 5,000 people. It takes a while, and don't get discouraged. Be consistent. And when you're consistent, then those people that you interact with, whether it's 2-way or it's 1-way, they're just reading your work, they know they can count on you. And over time, you too will find that if you miss, people will ask, hey, did I miss that thing? Because they've been counting on you and they're waiting for it.
I think it's really great how you said that dealing with that pressure of doing something or doing something right is keeps people from going out there and doing something at all. And so a better approach to that is just trial and error, doing something for a while, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and then reassessing according to that is a much more powerful tool, because you also come back learning something new. You also come back as developing a new skill or a new experience that you can talk about. So I think that's a very powerful message that you're sending out to all our viewers today.
Thank you. And when things get hard, inevitably they do, when you start doubting yourself, there's a couple things to do. One is reach out and talk to somebody that cares about you,
Mm-hmm.
cares about your success, that'll also be honest with you, but talk to them about how you're feeling. Especially at times like this, it's easy to be lonely. There's a lot of people, and especially young people, that are living by themselves right now.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out and talk to somebody about how you're feeling, about what you're doubting in yourself. It will diminish. It won't necessarily go away, but it'll help you work through it. And it's so important that you are reaching out to someone. And then the other thing is practicing self-compassion and giving yourself that break and acknowledging how you're feeling and working through it. And there's a great resource out there that's a free resource. It's a thought leader named Kristen Neff, and her website is self-compassion.org. And on her website, she's got some self-compassion tools and a free self-compassion assessment. The most valuable tool I have found on her website is some self-compassion guided meditations that help you learn to practice self-compassion by listening to those guided meditations that last anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. So they're not a big burden to try and work through, and it actually helps build your muscle by practicing using those tools.
That's amazing. I will make sure to put all of these resources out in the link so that our viewers can, go out there, check out what's out there, and then see what's right for them. So Jen, being a coach and working with so many leaders, you've developed plans on how they can convert this ideology and these and their ideas and their courage into actionable steps that they can take to move towards their goals. So what are some actionable steps that they can take right now to help them achieve their goals in the future?
First step is I want you to think about a year from now, what do you want to be different?
Mm-hmm.
One of the traps we can get into in goal setting is just setting a goal without a context. Where do you want to be? And I encourage you to write 3 or 4 sentences. It doesn't have to be long, 3 or 4 sentences of what do you want to be different a year from now? When you look at that description of the future a year from now, then what are some goals, 1 to 3 goals, that will ensure that that new future happens for you?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have those goals, then breaking down to the actionable steps, some of the things that you'll need to do to make that goal happen. And for everyone, it's going to be different. It depends on the goal that you have. But really important to start with that end in mind and writing those 3 to 4 sentences. That is really the hardest part, but it unlocks everything else that comes after it. And be really clear with yourself when you look at those actionable steps, behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I'm going to be a better communicator. That's not actionable. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read a book on hard conversations, or I'm going to practice giving feedback to my coworkers, or I'm going to brave giving positive feedback to my boss on something that they're doing that's having a positive impact on me. Or I'm going to reach out and have information interviews to identify 3 mentors. Be really specific on behaviors you're going to take on, actions, not concepts or theories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to think about it, is breaking it down into, the way I do it is break it down into either weekly or monthly events that I want to be able to accomplish. Let's say if I'm trying to improve on my networking skills, I'll perhaps set a goal of I need to attend 2 networking events per month, for example, to begin with. And then we can go, like we said, trial and error. We can go up and we can go down depending on how we feel about that.
And when it comes to, you make me think about networking and how can I network when there's no networking events? Networking is just about having conversations with other people. And when you go to a networking event is really to see who you connect with that you would like to get to know better, and building those professional relationships. And you can do it a variety of different ways. And you can reach out to someone on LinkedIn or through Facebook or through introduction by email of someone else that you have a relationship with. and ask that person for a 30-minute virtual coffee Zoom meeting. Uh, there's lots of different ways to get out and network, and they don't have to be in person. And I've done virtual coffee meetings with people all over the globe that I have built strong relationships with, that I would not have ever had the opportunity to meet in person had I or they not reached out and said, hey, I'd like to have a conversation.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I think that's so true. Now that we have all this technology, we can leverage it to actually connect with not just our cohort or our city, but rather our role models around the world.
Absolutely.
So, what are some final thoughts or advice that you would like to give our professionals, students, anyone who is moving towards career development, and yeah, so some final advice for them?
First of all, leadership isn't about the title,
Mm-hmm.
and being deeply invested in your own personal and professional development is a sign of a great leader in taking that approach to personal learning, and take that step to envision the future that you would like to have and create that path for yourself to get there. And one of the most important things that you could do in that plan is to look at ways that you can grow and develop yourself as a more well-rounded person, not just a professional, not just a leader, and looking at those things I talked about: courage, vulnerability, boundaries, that learning mindset, and including those pieces in your plan to help move you forward. And look for ways to connect with other people, whether it's mentors, reaching out and talking with people that are trusted in your life about the things that you're struggling with, but also the wins that you're having. And don't keep them to yourselves, especially at times like this. As I said, it's easy to be isolated, and many people are physically isolated, to keep reaching out. And it's through those interactions that you will continue to push yourself and develop yourself in new and unexpected ways.
Mhm. That's really valuable advice. I got to learn so much from you during this interview. So thank you so much for coming on
You're
our
welcome.
speaker series. And I can't wait to connect with you further.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.